Madam President.
The senator from Maryland.
Thank you, Madam President. I take this time to review with my colleagues S 4008, the Small Business COVID Relief Act of 2022, legislation that Senator Schumer has set up for action tomorrow. I want to start by saying that this bill and the underlying bill that it deals with, the Restaurant and Revitalization Fund, was a bipartisan product in which Democrats and Republicans worked together to help an industry that was in desperate need, the restaurant industry. It provided relief for their revenue losses, and we were proud that we were able to get that passed. The challenge was that after it was enacted, we provided $28 billion for the restaurants under the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. In reality, that was not enough money to cover the demand. And we found that we're close to 100,000 restaurants were able to qualify and receive funds under that program. 170,000 were shut out through no fault of their own. So we went to work, Democrats and Republicans, in an effort to rectify that inequity and help an industry that was in desperate need. We filed legislation in August of last year, and I am proud that it was bipartisan, joined by many of my Democratic colleagues and Republican colleagues. I want to single out Senator Roger Wicker, who has been the real champion on making sure that we worked in a bipartisan manner. We were joined on the Republican side by Senator Murkowski, Senator Ernst, Senator Cassidy, Senator Hyde-Smith, Senator Collins, and Senator Blunt, and others have joined us during the process. But I want to take you back a little bit before we filed that bill in August of last year. There was legislation filed that would replenish the funds at $60 billion, because we thought $60 billion was going to be needed in order to complete the funding. I think Senator Sinema led the effort in filing that legislation. The difference between the bill that was filed for $60 billion and the bill that we are going to be considering tomorrow is the bill tomorrow is $48 billion, less. We were able to reduce the amount of dollars that were needed in order to carry this out. Some restaurants have closed. We have tightened up the rules, and we can not only do that for $12 billion less than was initially thought was going to be possible when we had bipartisan support last summer, we're now able to expand it to other related industries, all of which has had bipartisan legislation in this body to provide relief. These are industries that were shut down as a result of COVID-19. They had tremendous revenue losses and incurred tremendous debt in order to stay in business. So we went and we provided in this bill for the same $48 billion, we include help for our gyms, we include help for minor league professional leagues, we provide money for the music venues, we provide money for border businesses, we provide money for the bus industry. We were able to do all that, and we're still less money than the original bill that was filed last summer. But we did a couple more things in order to make sure this was done in a very fiscally conservative way. We were able to find some offsets. There were no offsets in those other bills. We found about $5 billion of offsets that we put in this bill. We did something else that was not in the original act. We required the SBA to bring in all the applications before they allocate any money. Now, we had them already in the restaurants. These are ones that qualified before. But in the other areas, they will receive all the applications. And before they issue any checks, they have to make sure they have adequate resources. If they don't, there's a pro rata reduction, so there's no further need for us to be concerned about replenishing the funds. All that are improvements that were made on the original bipartisan legislation that was filed that is more considerate of the needs, less costly, and more efficient. Now, we have other protections that are built into this legislation. A restaurant cannot double dip. They have to subtract the monies that they received under paycheck protection programs, either the first or second round of funds, from what they would otherwise be qualified to receive. They have to have a revenue loss that they can document. So there's protections in the bill. But I want to go to what is the major issue why we really need to make sure we get this done. Because of the way that this was administered, partly as a result of a court action, you have two restaurants, side by side, identical in their needs, filing their applications on the same day. One was funded, one was not. The restaurant that was not funded, if it's still in business today, it's very likely that that restaurant owner has taken out loans in order to stay in business and is still trying to be competitive to that restaurant that's next door. It's very possible that restaurant is having trouble getting help, as all restaurants are having trouble getting help, but cannot compete in salary with that restaurant that got the help and now has to compete and try to get workers even though they didn't get the same financial assistance. So it is a matter of basic fairness. I want to go one step further. We in the Congress tried to prioritize those restaurants in underserved communities and traditionally underserved small business owners. And we set up a priority line for them to be able to get their help under the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. The court blocked that line. And we now have small business owners who are literally discriminated against because they were veterans or underserved communities. So as a matter of fairness, we really need to get this done. The need is there. We all know how restaurants are operating at less than full capacity today. They're still hurting as a result of COVID-19. This is going back and helping them in regards to their first year of losses, something we should have done a long time ago, but something that's desperately needed to get done. So I just really wanted to explain that to our colleagues why we are in need to get this done. We finally have an opportunity. Now, what are we going to be doing? We're going to be working on the motion to proceed. Now, this is not unprecedented. Let me remind my colleagues that the original bill that funded the restaurant fund was emergency funding. So it patterned itself after the relief we gave to the general small business community under the Paycheck Protection Program, which was also emergency funding. The original bill under the Paycheck Protection Program was also underestimated by hundreds of billions of dollars. And we came back, Democrats and Republicans, in a bipartisan way and replenished that fund literally overnight. Hundreds of billions of dollars as emergency funding without offsets. And now we're trying to finish what we started in regards to the restaurants. It should be no question about emergency funding, but we're again trying to be as careful as possible, so we've even found some offsets in order to make this easier for our economy. There's some who say, well, they're worried about what impact it's going to have on our economy. I think keeping small businesses open is pretty important for our economy. But we can tell you the Restaurant Association has informed us that a large part of these funds are going to be used to pay off debt that small business restaurants had to take out in order to stay afloat. So we're going to keep restaurants open, and they're going to be able to pay off their debt, and they're going to be able to add to our community. That is what is at stake here, and that's why we are so protective of making sure we try to get this done. Now, this is a motion to proceed. I've listened to the debate on this floor about how we have to have the Senate work. This is a bipartisan bill dealing with small business on a motion to proceed that will allow us to have the debate on the floor of the United States Senate. I don't understand any of my colleagues believing that this is appropriate to filibuster and not give us the 60 votes we motion to proceed. There's a lot of my colleagues who are always talking about reforming the rules in this place. Okay, I understand when we're getting to an emotional issue, it gets difficult for us to work together. But if we can't work together on a small business bill that was developed by bipartisan members, Democrats and Republicans, that is consistent of what we've been doing in helping small businesses generally. And we now have an opportunity to bring it to the floor for debate. It'll be open to amendment. Those who say, well, gee, is there other ways we can make this more affordable? Well, come forward. We've been working on this for a year, close to a year. And yes, that's why we've gotten good suggestions from Democrats and Republicans in order to try to make this work. But if you don't allow us to debate the bill on the floor of the United States Senate, I really don't understand that. If you profess that you want to see this place work, there's not a philosophical problem here of helping small businesses. Why can't we move forward? I don't even know why we need a cloture motion. We should be able to pass a motion to proceed on this bill and have a debate and go to amendments. And Senator Wicker and I have made it clear that we'll act as traffic cops. We'll try to figure out how the best way to consider this bill in order to make it work for all. Madam President, small businesses have a special way of filling our cities and towns that make them irreplaceable when they're gone. I think we all recognize that. They drive our local economies. They give us our neighborhood character. They make us proud of where we come from and where we live. If we allow them to disappear through inaction, they will leave holes in our community that we cannot easily fill. If we cannot pass one last round of aid, it will mean certain restaurant owners who have pending loans are going to close their doors forever. Those holes will exist in our community, and we will not be able to fill them. I ask my colleagues, all of us understand the importance of small business. We understand they're the growth engine in our community, the innovation engines in our community. We made a commitment to help them through COVID-19, and we've honored a large part of that commitment. This is the last chapter to complete that commitment, and I hope my colleagues will join us in allowing us to have this debate on the floor and support the help for our small businesses that are in desperate need. With that, Madam President, I would yield the floor.